mode.
Hello everyone. We'll give another minute or so for others to join. Thank you. So good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're connecting from. To introduce myself, I'm Shashidhar. I'm part of Citrix Ready technical team. I lead the mobility and the desktop ecosystem. And today we are here to talk about NVIDIA Grid, and we have Jared Covert, Senior Solution Architect, along with us as the presenter of this webinar. So to talk about Citrix Ready program, Citrix Ready is an end-to-end technology program. Jared, if you could just move to the next slide, please. Thanks. So to talk about Citrix Ready program, we showcase and recommend third-party product verifications and then solutions which are compatible with the Citrix products. So when we do this verification, it becomes very easy for the customers who could quickly find the solutions recommended by Citrix in the Citrix Ready marketplace. And we could navigate to citrixready.citrix.com and find all the Citrix Ready verified products listed there. So for more information about the Citrix Ready program, you could navigate to citrix.com/partner programs/Citrix Ready. So before we jump on to the presentation, I would like to thank you everyone for attending this webinar today, and I would like to welcome you all for the Citrix Ready technical webinar series. And before I hand it over to Jared, I would like to just quickly mention one more thing about the new platform that we have launched, which we call Citrix Ready Verification Portal. We're using this is an online tool which we have recently started to capture to get these verifications submitted via an online tool. To get more information about this, just shoot us an email at citrixready@citrix.com, and we will be able to assist you with some more information. So before we start this presentation, if you have any questions during this webinar, please use the question panel on the right hand side of the GTW window, and we will take your questions in the Q&A session at the end. We'll have few poll questions as well during the webinar. Please answer those. So without any further delay, please welcome Jared. Jared, all yours. Thanks.
Shashi, thanks so much for the introduction and getting us started here. Well, thank you all for joining us today. It's a great attendance, and really appreciate the opportunity to be able to present to all of you. The way that things are going to kind of go today is, first is I'm going to give you kind of an update on the Grid, the NVIDIA Grid platform. There's a couple of new announcements that maybe you have seen, maybe you haven't seen, but we'll dive a little bit more into detail on what those announcements are. And the other thing that I've received some pretty positive feedback on is demos. So we're going to keep the slides to a minimum, about 10 to 15 slides, just kind of as an overview. And then what we'll do is we'll actually dive into a demo, and I will show you how to install, how to configure the VGPU within your hypervisor. And then we'll also have a couple of poll questions throughout that can help us provide feedback back into our business units. And then there'll be a good amount of time for Q&A. So like Shashi mentioned, please, if you do have questions that come up, we'll do our best to get those answered towards the end. But just keep them coming into the questions section on the right-hand side of your screen would be wonderful. So what I want to just kind of start today is really kind of explaining what the NVIDIA Grid platform is. From a platform perspective, the NVIDIA Grid platform is really a software layer moving forward that resides on top of our Tesla data center GPUs. So Tesla data center GPUs have been around for quite some time. We've made a couple of modifications to the GRID platform, and now the GPUs that you would be purchasing are all Tesla products moving forward. We now have a piece of software that enables the virtual graphic functionality on top of that. And then we also have, on top of that, different optimizations for different applications. I'm going to actually highlight one of those optimizations in a moment to kind of show you that is a significant portion of our platform as well. Then we now are offering software updates maintenance on top of this solution. We found that it was best from a support perspective to work with NVIDIA directly in regards to maybe application challenges that you have, or maybe configuration challenges, that we've got the relationships with the ISV vendors and the Citrixes of the world to kind of connect those dots. And so now, as part of the platform, we offer this software updates and maintenance. So this is kind of the core of what we're going to talk about today. And as we dive a little bit deeper in, we'll talk about the Tesla GPUs, the product line, the software, and how to install it, how to locate it, and maybe some gotchas that might show up every once in a while as well. So as part of this platform, we had an initiative a while back that we called Real or Rendered. And this Real or Rendered is really just a fantastic solution that we did within our Quadro product line, and it actually now makes its way as a component that can be a part of the GRID platform as well. We have an illuminated lighting technology called iRay, and we have a handful of applications that have the ability to be extended. If you look at this slide, you'll notice that there's two DeWalt drills located here. One of them is real, one of them is rendered. And from a rendering perspective, what we are actually able to do now is to take a tool like Rhino, for instance. Rhino is a tool that people use to model out their products. Now, prior to the iRay plugin that NVIDIA offers, you had to look at your DeWalt drill in kind of a gray form factor. It didn't have the lighting, the yellow, the look as if it looks like an image. And this is a simple addition that we now can add to different software platforms or different software ISV packages that now allow that lighting and that real view of the product to come into play. And just like GRID software is adding benefits to the Tesla data center board, the iRay is now adding benefits as well to different products that exist out there in the marketplace. So you can see here, if you're curious of which one is actually real and which one is actually rendered. I should almost do a poll question here, but I'll go ahead and give you guys I'll let you know which one's real. And the one on the left is the actual real drill. The one on the right is the rendered drill, and you can see how fantastic that looks. And with this additional add-on that we now offer, we have the ability to bring this to numerous applications so that from a marketing perspective, they don't have to send products out to be photographed anymore. They can do this rendering right within the application and reducing that time to market for advertising and things of that way, shape, or form. So let's really quick just jump right into the products. We really are breaking our products down into two categories now. Performance optimized, and then we'll get into the following slide, which is really density optimized. From a performance optimized product, you may have seen the K2 product that we had. Now this K2 product is being end of life shortly. It's not to say that we're not going to support this product anymore, but it is moving away and being replaced with the Tesla M60 and the Tesla M6. And I just kind of throw up the stats of these products that exist. You can see it's quite a big jump in performance and density. From a K2 perspective, we were able to support 16 high-end users, and now with the M60, we're able to support 32. The Tesla M6 is kind of half of an M60, but the fantastic thing about this board is it enables us now to have blade offerings. So we now have all the major players have blade support with the Tesla M6. And moving forward, those are the boards that you would be purchasing. The Grid K2 is still available for another little while, but very shortly it will be end-of-lifed and moved away. That was a public announcement made a few months ago. But I wanted to kind of line this up to see if you are looking at high-end users, high-end use cases, you would be in one of these two boards moving forward. It would be the Tesla M60 or the Tesla M6. Now, from an announcement perspective, we announced some fantastic things at Citrix Synergy. We've always had the K1, and it falls into that K2 category of being end of life shortly. And it was always able to support 32 users. And you could have two of those boards within a server typically, which would give you a maximum of 64 users. And from the feedback we got from the customers out there in the field, they were wanting more density, more density, more density, more density. And so at Citrix Synergy, we announced the Tesla M10, which is kind of going to be the successor here, the predecessor to the K1. And we've doubled that density now to 64 users. We can support two of those boards in a server, putting us well over 100 users per server now, which really makes it so that we can have graphics for all. These are not as high end of a GPU as the other M6 and M60, but they do provide graphics for everybody. And this is what we're seeing here, is we're seeing a pretty big move towards everybody needing a little bit of graphics, everybody needing the ability to maybe do some form of hardware encoding or rendering of Internet Explorer and Firefox and Chrome, office productivity type applications and things of that sort. What I'd like to do here, based on kind of my statement and why we created this board, is I actually have a poll question I'd love to ask. It is, how many of you on the call are starting to see an increased need of graphic capabilities within your desktop virtualization product? So we should have a poll question available. And the question here is, do you see a need for more graphics within your desktop virtualization? So we'll leave this up maybe about another 10 seconds, 15 seconds or so. Wow, overwhelming yes. So just to kind of provide this feedback real time to those of you on the call, about 75% of you have chimed in, and we have a 95% yes on seeing a need for graphics within desktop virtualization. So that's exactly what we're seeing with our market research. So it just validates that some market research out there is doing their job correctly. But really, I think the M10 is the board that is perfect for that type of use case. I'm now enabling over 100 users per host, which is, from my architectural background, about the sweet spot of where we like to be within desktop virtualization. So fantastic. I appreciate the insight there, everybody, for chiming in. Okay, so how does this NVIDIA GRID stuff work? So let's kind of talk about this real quick. It's really broken into a couple of components. What you're going to see from NVIDIA in the months to come, and you're going to see kind of happening now, on the left-hand side of the screen is the NVIDIA Grid Management Tools. You're going to see this portion of our solution increase dramatically. Now, these management tools, NVIDIA SMI, NVML, different components that allow for monitoring, allow for different aspects to provide feedback into your environment of what's going on. And you're going to see that ramp. And that crosses the entire stack, not just at the server level or at the hypervisor level or at the card level, but all the way into the virtual machine. The way that this breaks down is that we've got our server. And in our server, we've got a couple of different components that exist on that card that kind of matter to us. We're going to see a pretty big uptick here at the NVIDIA GPU around that H264 encode. One of the things that Citrix has added into their Linux virtual desktop agent is the ability to use the GPU to encode the protocol leaving the host. So it really helps us to gain resources back and get better density and provide much more latent-free experience to our end users. And I think we'll see some improvements there as time comes. We've got the NVIDIA GPU that is broken up into the NV encoder, the different compute engines, different scheduling, things of that nature. And at the hypervisor level there, we install what's called the NVIDIA GRID VGPU Manager. Now, this is a critical piece to be installed because what this does is this actually helps us to moderate the creation and management of those virtual GPUs that are created off of that singular GPU within the graphics card. And once we have that virtual GPU created, we actually pass that right through to a virtual machine. And now we have the ability to install one of two different experiences based on your end user's needs. In the K1 and K2 days, we really were only offering the highest end Quadro experience for your users. And we found that not everybody needed that. Some users needed graphics for all, just enough to make the experience better. And so now we have a lower cost option with the NVIDIA GRID Virtual PC that gives us the ability to have a just great enough experience for all of our end users. And then we also have our NVIDIA Quadro driver, just like we had in the K1, K2, that has all the optimizations for our ISVs, and it has all of these fantastic solutions there. So depending upon your needs, you can mix and match whatever one of those types of driver solutions that you need. And then we also have the ability to get even more granular on how much frame buffer and things that we would need to offer to each user. And that VGPU manager is the component that would help orchestrate that from happening. You'll also, go back. You'll also notice on the right-hand side from a support perspective, today the minimum releases are going to be, your vSphere 6 and XenServer 6.5. XenServer 7 is also supported, and that's actually from a demo perspective what I'll be showing you. And then of course XenDesktop is supported there as well. So let's talk a little bit deeper dive about these GPU engines and what are the different kind of components that are a part of there. Now, within the Tesla GPU, kind of a simplified view here is that we've got our graphics compute engine, our video encode, which is that component that Citrix is taking advantage of in their Linux VDA. We've got our video decode and our kind of copy engine. So what happens here is that we spin up our VGPU 1 through 64 in the case of an M10, and each one of those frame buffers is dedicated to each one of those for its exclusive use. Now, what happens is from a compute engine perspective, and these GPU engines, these now are time sliced. So what happens is that each one of those virtual machines with the vGPU takes its time, its moment in time, very similar to how time slicing happens within a CPU. It takes its moment to execute the components and the things that it needs. Each vGPU has exclusive access to the entire engine during its slice of time, which is actually quite fantastic because now it gives each user the ability to have access to an extremely high-end GPU for that moment in time. They don't have to divide it up granularly to where maybe they just get a 1/64th of a GPU. They get much better experience overall. You can see here as the slide kind of navigates here, it's representing time slice 1, 2, 3, all the way out to N as their time slice works. Now, I want to kind of dive into this time slicing because sometimes people get confused and they think that time slicing based on grabbing data is going to mean that users are going to get bottlenecked and they're going to have challenges. So we have an engineer named Jeremy Main. He's based out of our Japan office, and he helped write a tool. Now, this tool is available. You can download this tool, and you can run it within your environment. And what this tool does is it gives us the ability to monitor the usage of the GPUs. So if you look here, what we're doing is we're within an application and we are panning, zooming, and rotating an object. And you can see over this 22-second period of time that it looks like that GPU is fairly consumed, right? It's busy as can be. Now, how am I going to divide that up among 16 additional users? And I think to answer the question, we need to really double-click down a little bit. And if we double-click down to a 1-second interval of that, what we can see here is lots and lots of unused space, so unused time between the spikes. So tons of time within here that give us the ability to support multiple users on that GPU. And this is really where the magic of grid comes into play. This gives us the ability to divide up that GPU efficiently across all of our users within that deployment. Oftentimes I see people from a testing, benchmarking perspective, and if I could leave you with some advice, I would be very cautious about performing how far can we scale with 10 users all hitting go simultaneously. One of the things that I could leave you with that I would really encourage is real-world testing. Some of the real-world testing does not mean that everybody is spinning their models simultaneously. Everybody is taking a graphical game type application and hitting go simultaneously so that it maximizes performance on the GPU. In a real-world scenario, this is much more of the test that we would see, and it does give us that scalability that we're desiring. So let's really quick talk about that NVIDIA GRID software, right? So we've got these GPUs, they're data center GPUs, and their life initially was born being compute GPUs. So you may have heard of NVIDIA doing all these neat things around machine learning, deep learning, computer AI. These Tesla boards had their start doing these types of compute things. And now what we've done is we've shifted the model a bit to enable us to take those very validated, awesome server GPUs, and now we just run that grid software on top of them that gives us that ability to take advantage of that. From a software perspective, we have 3 different versions of software that can run on the Tesla products. One of the newest offerings that we have is a solution for XenApp and RDSH environments. This is fantastic because this gives us the ability now to offer graphics into all of our XenApp type deployments and provide just a fantastic experience for XenApp users. Typically, XenApp users haven't had GPUs, but we're seeing that increase. And you guys told us with that 95, 96% answer. And now we have the ability to add a grid card to a XenApp deployment and provide that there. Then we've got a grid virtual PC. And this virtual PC is for users that may be looking for PC-type applications, browsers, high-definition video, and that gives us that ability. And then for those highest-end users, the users that are looking for professional graphics, users that need optimization around creating content, we now have got the virtual workstation solution. So now you're not always forced into using the virtual type higher end solution. Now we've got granularity that gives us the ability to pick and choose the solutions that are right for your deployments. So one of the neat things too that we recently announced with the virtual application solution is that if you already own virtual PC or virtual workstation, you're entitled now to have the virtual application. So this is very similar to those of you who purchase XenApp or XenDesktop. You know that if you purchase XenDesktop, you now are entitled to use as much XenApp as you want to support that XenDesktop environment. And the same now applies within the Grid Virtual Application solution. So any of your virtual PC or virtual workstations, you can now deliver applications to your users via XenApp included in that license model, which is just another really great solution. And it also makes a lot of sense syncing up with Citrix's solution as well. So let's take a look at how this looks in kind of the real world here. On the left-hand side, kind of down here, we've got our hypervisor with our grid boards. Now, with virtual applications, we have the ability to do a couple of different things. We can use a 1 gig, 2 gig, 4 gig, 8 gig, the entire GPU, and pass that through to the virtual XenApp host. We install that NVIDIA driver, and now we've got the ability to publish out our Chrome, our Office, our miscellaneous type applications with unlimited applications to any of our users. But we also have the ability to do pass-through if so desired. We can pass that GPU through. So it doesn't matter which way you want to get the GPU into your XenApp deployment. You can now pass that through or use virtual GPU, and now we have the ability to deliver our applications out to any of our users that we so choose. So as we dive a little bit more into kind of looking at the differences between the virtual PC and the virtual workstation, it comes down into number of displays, resolution support, and then the amount of frame buffer that we can offer to our users. As you can see here, just kind of in this brief slide here. So from a virtual PC perspective, really there's a couple of things that difference here. You notice on the left-hand side, we can use with virtual PC the 512 or 1 gig frame buffer, and now we're licensed on a per concurrent user basis. Now that doesn't mean it's per user. You can follow the sun and use multiple users accessing the deployment, very similar to how Citrix works. And you see here, we've got the hypervisor, the virtual GPU. We've got our virtual PC profile that would be assigned to that virtual machine. And then we install our just standard NVIDIA graphics driver. So that's the significant differentiator here. Typically, the type of applications you're going to use with the virtual PC is going to be your browsing type applications, maybe some light type of from graphical applications for viewing data that was created. When we get into virtual workstations, we do have a little bit of a change. We basically are fully unlocked. We have the ability here to run whatever profile that you choose, including pass-through, including the full GPU. And this is where we run the NVIDIA Quadro driver. So we do a lot of work on our drivers. And the NVIDIA Quadro driver by no means is a slouch here. We have a huge team of developers that works with all the vendors that you're seeing here and ensures that that driver is optimized for those applications. We oftentimes add additional features into those applications to make them perform better or make them have an overall better experience for the end users. So virtual workstation, any profile you want, the Quadro driver, best of breed, and now we have that capability to any user. So that's it with the slides. I wanted to jump into a demo, and essentially, before we jump into the demo, I wanted to do really quick just a couple of poll questions, and then we'll jump in, and this will help me to adjust the demo a little bit. One of the things I'd like to know, if people don't mind, is how many people on this call are current GRID customers? So are you a current GRID customer? Okay, we've got about 3/4 of the votes in, and that's good data. Okay, so the next one is, depending upon this might help my demo a bit, is what hypervisor are you, if you are a GRID customer, what hypervisor are you using with GRID? Now, we can tweak this question up a little bit. If you're aggressively looking at another hypervisor, is there another one in there? I guess we didn't put VMware in there, which we probably should have. But it looks like the majority of people on this are Xen server at this point. Wow, it's interesting to see Acropolis up there. That's grown quite a bit. Okay, thank you for the feedback there, and let's jump into a demo. Couple things. One of the biggest questions I get is, I'd like to buy GRID. What server do I use? So let me actually take you here. We're going to start out at NVIDIA.com. So at NVIDIA.com, if we actually go into products and we go down into virtual desktops and applications, and we say buy. Down here at the bottom left, you'll see is find a certified server for your deployment. So down here, depending upon what board you're looking at, is a list of all the cards. So K1, K2, M10, M6, M60, and all the different server vendors, how many of those cards they support, all in one place. So at that point, you could reach out to the OEMs, and they can help quote that solution. It's important that when you're ordering a server, that you let that OEM know that you're intending on adding graphics to it. Oftentimes, the servers have to be configured a little bit differently. They're not necessarily the same. Sometimes they have a more powerful power supply. Sometimes they have more powerful fans to keep the cards cool. And sometimes they have what's called a GPU enablement kit, which is typically cables to power the cards. So definitely remember this page, because if you are looking at moving forward with Grid, it's important that you look through this page to ensure that you are capable of having a Grid card with your different solutions. So let's say you've purchased an M60 and you need to download the VGPU drivers. Now, a lot of people are used to coming in here to NVIDIA All Drivers because maybe you have a brand new 1080, which it defaults to, and there is some Grid components in here. But this is actually not the place to go to download your drivers. So within this solution, this is K1, K2. Moving forward with the M6 and M60, we have a licensing mechanism in place, and it's a different web page that we need to go to. So if we actually instead, there's a link off of that page as well, but I'll type it in, nvidia.com/grid eval. Grid eval will take us to a page where we can sign in, where we can register for our trial, and now we have the ability within this page to download our miscellaneous drivers, our virtual GPU, our drivers, maybe mode change utilities, things of this way, shape, or form that are needed to help deploy the environment. This GPU mode change utility helps us we have the ability to convert this board back to a compute board if you wanted to run deep learning, machine learning type workloads. We have customers that run both. So they have the VGPU functionality, and maybe they have some deep learning or machine learning initiatives within their organization, and they can convert their GPUs to be able to do compute, and that gives you that capability to convert those for a different type of workload when that's needed. So in this scenario, I would need the Grid for Xen Server 7 because that's the environment that I have, and I have a hypervisor up here and running. So this is actually my server for Briform. If any of you guys are going to be going to Briform, come up and say hi, and I'll let you drive around and play with this server at Briform, but this is what's shipping out today to go to Briform next week. Now, a couple things that we have in here. I've got my Xen Server 7, so if I just kind of show you what I've got going on here. This is Xen Server 7. I've got domain controller, desktop controller, and just a couple of virtual machines. I happen to have the VGPU manager installed already. So if I click on this GPU tab, and I love the fact that Xen Server's got this GPU tab, it gives me the ability to see all different kinds of neat things. So I can see that here I'm running a 4Q profile, so it's taking half of a GPU. In this server, I have one M60 installed. So an M60 has 2 GPUs on it, so I can actually see my 2 GPUs. I have a XenApp server installed, and I'm giving it the 8Q profile. And then over here to the right, it shows me all the additional profiles that I could use in that deployment as well. The Q profiles are the virtual workstation profiles. The B profile here is a virtual PC profile, and the A profile is our virtual application profile specifically for XenApp or RDSH. So how do I get this functionality on my hypervisor? Well, the first thing is you've got to get a server that would work with our specific OEM. All the OEMs can just add these right into your server when you ship them, and you're off and good to go. Once you install your Xen server, of course, we would patch it, make sure it's all happy. And one of the things I really appreciate about Citrix and David Cottingham's team is they really have added some great tools for you guys to make this as easy as possible. Typically, and VMware still has to do this, you had to SFTP the RPM package to the host. You had to run some command line stuff to install those VGPU manager. And Citrix has made it very, very simple. If any of you have run updates, all you do now is you go to run an update, and we simply browse. We simply browse for our package, and it's actually an ISO. You see here, it's just an ISO utility. Once we select that, we now select all of our servers that we want to install this to. So if we had, 10 servers, 15 servers, we would just select them all, and we would hit next. It runs through our checks. In this scenario, I've got a CD mounted to Windows 10. I'm not going to complete this, but you get an idea. What this will do is it'll upload that RPM package to every server in the resource pool. It will migrate machines around. It will reboot the hosts. And when we come back, we now will see this screen, this GPU tab in this screen. So just really simple way to deploy this. Literally just a handful of clicks, and you're off and running, and you now have that VGPU manager installed. And the update procedure for it is the exact same. So if a new one was released, you just go through the exact same process to update it, and you're all off and running. Really, really cool process that we just couldn't be more tickled about, because it really does simplify this and make it as easy as it should be. A couple of other things. I need to assign a virtual GPU to a virtual machine. How do I do that? I've got a Windows 7 machine here. So actually just go down into Properties. You'll now see that there is a GPU tab. And now I have all my different profiles. I would select the profile that I want, and maybe this is going to be a 1A profile. And as I start this machine, I don't have enough. Let me actually change profiles. If I start this machine now, and I go back to my 4Q, you'll notice now as we watch the screen, oh, that machine's dead. I have to do a different one. Let's do this guy. You'll see here that as this machine comes online, we will now see that it now takes the remaining resources of that. Now I have the ability to, not split this card in half. I could split it up to, 16 ways. I'm just using larger profiles here, kind of from a demo perspective to show you what's going on. But pretty cool capability. You can visibly see what's going on within these. Now, one of the biggest problems I see is that somebody comes in and they call me up, or they call our support, and they say, I go to GPU type, and all I see is pass-through whole GPU. I know I installed the VGPU manager correctly, but I only see pass-through GPU. What's going on? What have I done wrong? And it's pretty simple. 9 times out of 10, if you go to License Manager, the key here is that somebody has forgotten to license their Xen server. So it's really important that if you are going to deploy the VGPU framework within a Xen server, just remember that the server does need to be licensed. If you're already an owner of XenApp and XenDesktop, you get the license for Xen server. You just need to point this to your licensing server. As you can see here, this is where I'm pointing that to. And then that activates that virtual GPU functionality. But that is important to remember, and is definitely probably my biggest problem I have from a support perspective within server is people remembering to license this. So please remember that. Now, a couple of other things that are just impressive that Citrix has added in here as well. From a graph perspective, so one of the things that Citrix has added is the ability to actually monitor the GPU. It gives us the ability to monitor free memory, memory utilization, power usage, temperature. So this is another important thing that's very useful to add into our deployment from a monitoring perspective. So we have that ability now to monitor this type of data as we need. So a lot of people don't realize that that's there. And just a really useful thing to have is this monitoring capability. So don't forget that you have some limited monitoring capability that's in here as well. Another useful tool that a lot of people forget is that we actually have some command line utilities. So what I've done is I've selected the Zen server host, I've gone to console, and within console we have this tool called NVIDIA SMI. And NVIDIA SMI gives us the ability to kind of see the temperature, the current wattage of the GPUs, how much memory is being used, or the total utilization of the GPU. And then down here, we can actually see our VGPUs being created. So these are kind of the pieces that are being moderated or managed by that VGPU manager. We can also put an L on the end of it and loop it. You notice now it's going to sit there and loop over and over again. I don't recommend doing this in production because it does have a little bit of potential performance challenge, but it's great if you're troubleshooting or if you spin a virtual machine up and you wanted to see what GPU is being used there. But another good tool to have. Now, from a XenDesktop perspective, let me actually jump back here. So we're going to launch the Citrix Studio. This happens to be the Citrix Studio that is actually located right here. So this is that desktop controller. And it's an MMC, so it takes a minute to launch. All right, I got about 3 minutes to show you guys this. So if it doesn't launch here in a second, we'll call the demo good and we'll jump into Q&A. I see a good amount of questions that are kind of queuing up there.
This usually happens in the demos. So
yeah, let's call that demo. But I see a bunch of questions coming up. So let's actually jump to the questions. And for those of you who are looking to kind of see that other part of the demo, which is around how to configure the host and the stuff within the XenDesktop Studio, we have some fantastic guides that have been created with Citrix around deployment. And within those deployment guides, they walk through step-by-step of how to attach the desktop controller to either a VMware or Zen server environment, running VGPU to those. And I've left up some resources here that hopefully will help and link you towards those guides as well. Now, I know we've got a bunch of questions, so I don't know if we've been fielding them or what the best way to handle these would be, but I think we've got about 15 minutes for questions, and based on how many I'm seeing, we're going to use all that 15 minutes.
Yeah, sure, Jared. So I'll try to keep the questions short, and if you have any questions pending right after this call, we'll definitely answer those questions and we'll reach out to you as well. Okay, so to start with, there's the question: when exactly is the end of life for K2 cards?
So I believe the official end of life is the end of this year. Kim, Isidro, do you guys have the exact date on that? I believe it's the end of the year.
Okay, thank you. The next one is the Tesla M10 licensing the same model as M60 licensing?
It is. It's the same model as that. Typically with M10, we're going to be seeing virtual PC or virtual applications. I wouldn't really recommend a virtual workstation license on M10. It's really a board built for density, not performance. And if you're running virtual workstation, as a licensing, that's really going to be in the M60 or M6 class of GPU.
Okay, thank you. I think this question was asked during this webinar itself. What is the tool name used to see the GPU utilization?
So if you head out to NVIDIA.com, the tool is available to be downloaded. I don't know if it has a specific name. It's a tool produced by Jeremy Main. He's one of the solution architects.
Okay, thank you. The next one would be
GPU monitoring.
GPU monitoring, yeah. So should I go with the next one, Jared?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. I'll see if I can come back. I'm going to track it down.
Okay, great. The next one is, are Grid Virtual PC and Virtual Workstation available online for a test drive?
So they are. If you have a board, you can download those and take a look at them. Not a problem. From a test drive perspective, there is some methodology that you can go through the Citrix sales force, Citrix sales engineers that can give you an environment to demo, but you need to reach out to your Citrix SE, and they have the ability to bring an environment online to take a look at that. To the last question, the tool is called GPU Profiler.
Okay, yep. Thank you. Great.
It's available on the NVIDIA community page.
Okay, perfect. So probably once we're done, we will also share this link along with the answers.
Sure.
Yeah. The next one is, what are the key factors to consider in deciding VGPU versus pass-through?
So typically from a pass-through perspective, I see pass-through oftentimes, I see pass-through not being used as much anymore, and that's due in part of the manageability that comes with the VGPU framework. So you're going to get better monitoring, you're going to get more granularity and kind of manageability. Pass-through is definitely kind of being, I wouldn't say phased out, it's always going to be there, but you don't need it as much anymore. In the K1, K2 days, we needed pass-through to do things like CUDA and OpenCL. Nowadays, we can do CUDA and OpenCL with the 8Q profile, so it's not needed quite as much. I have seen pass-through being done still in some XenApp deployments, and I have seen it being done in machine learning or deep learning type workloads. So where we pass that GPU through to a Linux virtual machine, maybe run a bunch of containers and passing it through and having that handle it. But I don't see as much pass-through anymore with the M series of cards due to the fact that the 8Q profiles have that functionality now.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay, the next question follows, like, from hypervisor perspective, what is the benefit of using XenServer for a grid solution based on XenDesktop compared to using vSphere?
It's really a Citrix question, but I'll give you my opinion. My opinion is right out of the gate cost. There's no additional cost with using XenServer. And from a functionality perspective, VMware and Citrix are on par. I'd say the features I highlighted, that monitoring, that graphical install, that graphical ability to kind of see, that's a Citrix exclusive. They're the really only ones that have that now. Now, I'm sure VMware will get it at some point in time, but the biggest main reason would be cost. It's included with your XenApp and XenDesktop license.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Right, so followed with that, so for hosting network copies of AutoCAD Civil 3D in a XenApp environment, which card would NVIDIA recommend? So it's like VDA.
Typically AutoCAD in a XenApp deployment is not usually the right use case. AutoCAD is something that would most likely fall under VDI, not XenApp. But I have seen customers do it. A couple of things to validate first is to ensure that your Autodesk is going to support it. make sure that they're going to support that type of platform and reaching out to the ISV. Now, oftentimes you guys have more pull with the customer or with the ISV than say NVIDIA or Citrix, because you might have an enterprise licensing agreement and that will get you support. So as long as it's supported, from a card perspective, I would still lean towards the M60 for those higher end applications. The typical deployment for XenApp that I do see is going to be a 8Q or an 8A profile, so the highest end profile passed through to each virtual machine with two M60. So most people will run 4 XenApp VMs on a host and then connect users across those 4. But ultimately, you just would have to test and ensure. But I have seen it run, and in that scenario, it's been the M60 that is run for that type of deployment. Now, if this was going to be Office or something like that, then I would definitely go down the M10 and I would up that to 8 virtual machines. So the M10's got 4 GPUs, the M60's got 2.
Okay, great, thanks. I think I would go with one more question and we'll conclude this because of the time. So this one would be, do you have a time frame as to when this technology will be available at a higher density on Cisco UCS blades?
So Cisco's actually got some pretty big solutions now. They partner with a company called Magma. And I believe with the Magma solution, they have an external PCI chassis where they can get more dense solutions there. When it comes to blades, a lot of people are like, well, I want, to run 5 GPUs in my blade. For the most part, blades are pretty compact. And we actually created, if I jump here, maybe we can see a quick picture of it. If you look at the very beginning of my slide, I think I have a picture. So if you see right here on the left-hand side, this is what's called an MXM module. So this is the card, the form factor that actually goes into a blade. And so it goes into a measuring set within the blade. And it's dependent upon the Cisco's, the Dells, the HPs of the world, of how many of those they can get into the measuring slots in the blade. So it's really a Cisco-ish question. For instance, HP has a secondary chassis, or it's a secondary blade module that can hold, I believe, 4 of those MXM modules that bonds the 2 blade cartridges together and allows for more. But all these OEMs have different solutions is the point, and you really would need to reach out to them for that question.
Thanks, Jared, for the wonderful presentation and answering these questions as well. We know there are some more questions, but due to lack of time, probably we'll be able to take up these questions and answers, and we'll reach out to you shortly via email. Jared, anything else you want to add up to this? Or are we good to conclude?
Yeah, if there is questions that come up, feel free to hit the NVIDIA Grid on Twitter, and just keep in touch with us. There's also some places within the nvidia.com/grid webpage that you can submit questions. And then we also have our forums, gridforums.nvidia.com. Feel free to hit the forums and ask questions myself and the whole global SA team monitor that. And we'd love to ensure that we get all your questions answered. And we just appreciate all of your time today. Hopefully this was useful. Great attendance, and look forward to seeing you throughout the events and the things that take place around the globe.
Thank you, Jared. And I thank you all for attending today's webinar in this Citrix Ready Technical Webinar Series as well. So this concludes our broadcast. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.